Hello everyone, today we have a quick delve about John Locke and his work of Second Treatise of Civil Government. So first, let me ask you a question. What gives a government the right to rule over us? This question has shaped the way we think about freedom and democracy today. Just imagine a world where everyone is free, but there are no laws, no rules, no one to enforce justice. So what will society look like? It is anarchic, right? This was the world where John Locke envisioned, and he argued that freedom, while still powerful, it needs protection. His second treatise of civil government gave birth to modern democratic ideas that continue to shape our world today. So now, let's take a closer look at 7 key concepts from his second treatise of civil government by John Locke. So first, we will talk about the state of nature. So John Locke started with a simple truth that all men are born free. Isn't that right? In his ideas of the state of nature, a world without government or rulers, people are equal and guided by their reason. No king, no master, just individuals. But here's the catch. Freedom without protection is fragile. So to secure their natural rights, their life, liberty, and property, people band together and form a government. But this government doesn't rule by force or an authoritarian way. It must be ruled by the consent of the people. The government exists to serve the people and preventing a power from concentrating to one authority. So after talking about the state of nature, we will move on to property. Now let's talk about property. For Locke, property isn't something you inherit from your state, your ancestors. It's something you earn. When you mix your labor with a natural resource, that resource becomes yours. Your hard-earned labor gives you something, and that is property. That is simple, right? For Locke, he warned against greed. He argued that we should only take what we need and use resources wisely, because nothing created by God was meant to be spoiled or to be destroyed. However, it's interesting to note that Locke's own involvement in slavery, though he mentioned about the natural rights, he had a involvement in Carolina colony and his investment in transatlantic slave trade. Now, it contradicts to his own doings. Isn't it funny, right? So moving on, we will talk about Locke's civil society and the social contract. So John Locke understood that even in a free world, there's no natural authority to enforce justice. So that's why people form a civil society. They agree to a social contract to give up certain freedoms in exchange for protection. Protection of life, liberty, and property. But here's the important part. Government must act with the consent of the governed. If it becomes unjust or corrupt, the people have the right to rebel and the duty to resist. As we can see, Locke's emphasis on the idea that government is a social contract formed by the consent of the governed laid the groundwork for modern democratic system. His belief that government should protect life, liberty, and property remains foundational to democratic principles in the idea of individual rights. So after forming a society, Locke argued that the primary role of any newly established society is to establish laws that the people have consented to. For example, taxation. It should never be imposed without the people's approval. It's not just about making rules, it's about making fair rules together. As we can see, this is the foundation of modern democratic governance. Think about how we create laws today. Congress debates bills, votes, and passes laws that affect us all. It's a direct reflection of Locke's idea that laws should be made with public consent. So upon talking legislative power, Locke proposed dividing power into 3 branches. First is the legislative, which creates laws, the executive power, which executes laws, and the federative, which its main duty is about relationship with other countries, or as we say, diplomacy. So this way, no single branch becomes too powerful. Uh, from the idea of John Locke, it became a central to modern democratic system, especially in the Philippine Constitution and American Constitution. It is something we still see today in democratic governments around the world. It is the backbone of the checks and balances. So next, we will talk about the power of the people. So Locke's most radical idea is that the true power lies with the people. Governments are not the masters, they are the agents of the people, whom entrusted with authority to serve the public good. So if a ruler acts without the people consent, they are not a leader. They are an aggressor, very much a dictator. So as we can see, Locke's thinking helped lay the groundwork for the democratic system we rely on today, where governments are supposed to serve, not dominate, the people that wish the democratic type of government around the world. So next, the last key idea from the second treatise of the government, the possibility of resistance. So Locke also understood something profound. People don't rebel over minor issues, they endure, they wait, but when a government repeatedly threatens the very right of the people have the right to resist. Resistance for Locke is an act of chaos. It's an act of justice. The right to resist is built into the very fabric of the government created by the people. This thinking of Locke paved the way for oppressive regimes to crumble, like the Marcos dictatorial regime, Nazi Hitler of Germany, and Benito Mussolini of Italy. So upon talking to all these key concepts of John Locke and his second treatise of government, we can compare it to philosophers like Thomas Aquinas, where we see a shared belief in reason and freedom as natural gift. They both believe that people are driven by their nature to reject oppression in a way that people endure so much, they have the right to revolt. So John Locke's ideas may have been conceived centuries ago, but they are just as relevant as they were during the Enlightenment period. Locke's ideas have shaped revolution, inspired constitution, and continue to influence how we think about governments and freedom today. So the next time you think about democracy and the freedom you enjoy, remember that it all started with a man named John Locke. Thank you.